We'll be starting shortly. Good afternoon, everyone. We're just waiting for one panelist to join us. All right, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this online dialogue on combining food security and food safety, challenges of pesticide use and regulation in Nigeria, and possible solutions. My name is Jochen Lukscheit. I'm the head of the Budget Office of the Heinrich Böll Foundation. We are a German political foundation affiliated to the Green Party. As you would all agree, agriculture is a major backbone of Nigeria's economy. It accounts for about 1/5 of the country's GDP, and more than 1/3 of its active labor force is directly employed in the sector. However, agriculture is also facing a number of major challenges in the country. It needs to feed a rapidly expanding population in a warming climate characterized by frequent floods and dry spells that reduce soil fertility, while some of Nigeria's agricultural states face severe insecurity and conflict at the moment. The ongoing COVID-19 pandemic has further exacerbated the situation through supply chain disruptions, but also other macroeconomic impacts that have led to spiraling food inflation in the country, which now stands at 16.5%. The highest since 2008. According to the World Bank, the number of adults skipping a meal in the last 30 days has risen from less than 30% in January 2019 to more than 70% in August 2020, illustrating the sharp rise in food insecurity in the country when Nigeria was already facing a huge malnutrition burden. Unsurprisingly, government policies have over the years focused on increasing productivity of local agriculture to decrease the reliance of the country on food imports. As in many other countries, however, the intensification of agricultural production to meet the demand of both local and export markets is increasing the use of pesticides in Nigeria. However, the current level of use at farm level, but also at the level of storage, so further down the food value chain, appears to be unsustainable as effects in form of mounting negative health, environmental, and economic impacts are mounting. All too often we come across headlines that, for example, Nigeria's beans are banned from the EU due to residue levels of pesticides beyond what is the acceptable threshold. Or also on the high prevalence of food poisoning incidences, some of which are alleged to be in relation to improper use of pesticides, to name just 2 examples. It is against this backdrop and in the context of a global rise in awareness about the long-term negative consequences of the intense use of pesticides that we as the HBS Nigeria office have decided to commission a scoping study into the challenges of pesticide use and regulation and possible solutions in Nigeria, the main findings of which will be presented here today by the lead researcher of the study, and which you can also find on our webpage, www.ng.boell.org. But since this event ought to be a dialogue and not just a presentation of findings, we are also very grateful that many of the key government actors in relation to the topic have agreed to join us here today to provide insight into their work, their challenges, but also their perspectives on possible solutions to the existing problems. This includes the Ministry of Agriculture, who will provide a short welcome address, the National Agency of Food and Drug Administration and Control, NAFDAC, and also the Nigeria Agricultural Quarantine Service, NAQS, among others, and I would already like to thank you all for your participation. I also would like to acknowledge a number of people in the audience that further demonstrates how important the issue is and how much interest there is to discuss it. That's a team from the Federal Ministry of Health, Dr. Chris Izokubunbu, Director and Senior Technical Assistant to the Honorable Minister of Health, and Dr. Dobura Imoren, Technical Assistant to the Honorable Minister of Health as well. Also would like to acknowledge Dr. Odebi Kasim. He's representing the Honorable Minister of the Federal Ministry of the Environment. And I would also like to acknowledge representatives of the Federal Competition and Consumer Protection Council of Nigeria and representatives of the Federal Ministry of Finance. So thank you very much all for coming. And without further ado, I would like to now invite Dr. Oyekele Abdul-Razak, who is the Director of Nutrition and Food Safety from the Federal Ministry of Agriculture, and also representing the Honorable Minister of Agriculture, Alhaji Sabo Nanono, to give us a few words of welcome. So thank you very much. And then after that, we will go into presentations by various stakeholders. This will be followed by an opportunity for all of you to engage in a discussion and make comments in relation to what has been presented here today. So, but for now, I call on Dr. Oyekele Abdul-Razak to provide some welcome remarks on behalf of the Federal Ministry of Agriculture. Dr. Abdul-Razak, please go ahead.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me, please? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear
yes,
you.
We can see and hear you. Please go ahead.
Okay. I want to welcome all the participants to this dialogue. And on behalf of the Honorable Minister of Agriculture, Alhaji Sabo Nanono, and the Permanent Secretary of the Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development, Dr. Ernest Afolabi Umakiri. I welcome everyone to this all-important dialogue. With the team combining the food security and food safety challenges of the use of pesticide and regulation in Nigeria, and with the possibility of profiling solutions. This program is apt and it is coming at the right time. It will address the various aspects of pesticide program usage in Nigeria, the problem, and I therefore commend the organizer of this dialogue, Enrich Stephen, the organizer. Oh, I have not murdered your name. Pardon me if I've done so. The Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development has mandate of policy formulation and implementation on crop and livestock industries. These and storage activities. Pesticides used for the destruction of insects
It seems we have lost Dr. Abdul Razak, unfortunately. With that, I would then suggest that we maybe proceed straight to the first presentation. And let's Dr. Abdul Razak continue with maybe his remarks after the presentations to wrap up, which is unfortunate now. But yeah, let's go ahead with the program. Dr. Abdul Razak, you're back.
Yes, I have challenge of the technology here.
Okay, then maybe keep your camera switched off so that we improve the quality of the connection.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I think you can hear me now, clearly. I was about to say pesticides are a group of chemicals used for the destruction of insects, weeds, fungi, bacteria, etc. They are generally classified as insecticide, fungicide, bactericide, herbicides, rodenticides, etc. Most of the pesticides have the ability to destroy a wide variety of pests or weeds, but some are developed against specific pests or pathogens. Most of these chemicals are designed in such a way as to disrupt the physiological activities of the target organism, leading to dysfunction and reduced fertility. The increase in awareness of the dangerous health implications of the use of inorganic chemicals in the food chain impresses moral and legitimate obligations on all the stakeholders to control or regulate the use of agrochemical pesticide to ensure food safety and security. Pesticide residues have constituted a significant sort of contamination on environmental factors such as air, water, and soil. The greater use of pesticide for high agricultural production has led to increased pollution of our environment. And this has resulted into the rejection of our produce meant for export. This phenomenon could become a continuous threat to the coexistence of plant and animal communities in our ecosystem and lead to loss of about 1/3 of the world's agricultural production every year, despite the fact that pesticide consumption comes up to more than 2 million tons every year. It is important to note that the characteristics of pesticides, such as the characteristics of pesticide have potential to long-range transportation. They have increased the chances of contamination in the air, water, and soil, even after many years of application. According to some studies, about a small percentage of about 3% of applied pesticide goes to the target pest, while the rest, 99.7%, goes somewhere to pollute our environment. According to the World Health Organization, 80% of the pesticides are used by developing countries due to lack of proper legislation, improper market regulation, and ignorance shown by people. And as such, agricultural workers from developing countries are prone to experience high level of exposures to agricultural chemicals. Although farmers are considered to be the main risk group, formulators, loaders, mixers, production workers, and agricultural farm workers are all extremely susceptible to exposure to dangerous chemicals. The non-occupational hazards may be due to pollution of the ecosystem or our habitat as a whole. The estimated death and chronic diseases due to pesticide poisoning amount to about 1 million per year worldwide. The overuse of or the misuse of pesticide is contributing adversely to the environmental health hazard as well as to ecosystem. It is in recognition of the occupational and environmental hazards associated with the use and misuse of pesticides that our ministry, Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development, is shifting its activity and recommendation from inorganic categories of pesticide to organic pesticides. I therefore urge seasoned and experienced professionals participating in this discussion to take advantage of this opportunity to contribute effectively and provide sustainable solutions to develop the pesticide industry to meet up to international standards, to such an extent to achieve food safety and competitive export of our product in international market. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, it is my sincere pleasure on behalf of the Honorable Minister of Agriculture and Rural Development, as well as the Permanent Secretary, to welcome everyone to this all-important dialogue. Thank you I'm sorry for taking much of your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Abdul Razak, for this words of welcome. Much appreciated. Thank you for laying out once more in detail the extent of the problem and the various aspects of it. I find it encouraging to hear that the Ministry of Agriculture is starting to shift its thinking and to look more towards organic pesticides in order to avoid some of the problems that we're currently facing. So thank you very much once again, and thank you for the Honourable Minister to make your time available to be with us here today. Without further ado, I would like to hand over to Dr. Silke Bollmore, who is an ecotoxicologist and was the lead researcher on the study that we commissioned on pesticide use and regulation in Nigeria. At the same time, I also would like to acknowledge her co-author, Ademola Oladipo, who supported her throughout the research with all his knowledge and capacity to make this study happen. Thank you very much, Silke. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Let me just share my screen. Yeah, thank you for giving me the opportunity to present some of the results of the report to everyone. As Jochen Luckenscheider said already, Nigeria is facing a couple of challenges in terms of the agricultural sector, and I think that's clear to all of us. There are a lot of food security challenges, and I don't want to repeat them. But there are also a couple of food safety challenges, which are also quite a problem for the export market, because it seems to be a problem to adhere to the MRLs set by the EU, for example, which definitely impacts the export possibilities. There are various scientific studies looking at the food residues on various food within the country, including watermelon, including indigenous vegetables, and very often, or quite often, the concentrations are exceeded. But in general, there's very little information on residues on the local market, because it seems there is no proper regular monitoring program in place. So as a result of these challenges, Nigeria pushes its agricultural sector, as we heard already, towards more efficient production and a greater role in the country's economic diversification strategies. However, it seems to us that these strategies mainly promote conventional and industrial agriculture that requires high external input of not only pesticides, but also seeds and artificial fertilizers. And this is why we decided to look at the study on the registered pesticides in the country, their possible effects on human health and environment, the status of recent and current policies, which may influence the pesticides or may have influenced the pesticides, as well as we identified a couple of gaps in the system and possible solutions from our side to reach a more sustainable food production, safe to Nigerian citizens and fit for export. So first of all, I would like to present you the first step we basically did in the study. We looked at all the registered pesticides at the NAFDAC webpage, and we found that all in all, 1,004 products are registered in Nigeria, which is equal to 145 active ingredients. This is quite usual, there are more products than active ingredients, because one active ingredient can be in many, many products, as for example, glyphosate, which is in 115 products registered in Nigeria. There are no reliable data over time for Nigeria's pesticide imports, but the latest information available from the FAO shows that the country imported pesticides worth of 384 million in 2018. And this is the highest import value within West Africa. So we all know that pesticides can have an effect on human health and on environmental health. And we picked a couple of chronic human health effects we actually looked at in the report, but I only want to show you here in the presentation 3 very common chronic human health effects. The one is carcinogenicity. Let me just remove the pictures here, sorry. So pesticides can have carcinogenic properties, and that means they damage the genome or disrupting cellular metabolic processes. Then pesticides could also have an impact on your neural system or nervous system, and it can affect the structure and the function. In that case, pesticides are neurotoxic. And very often pesticides can have an effect on the reproduction. So that means they have adversely effects on the sexual function and the fertility in adults, but also on the development in babies and children. So we were interested now in these 3 chronic health effects, and of these 1,004 products we identified being registered, we now looked at the possible or proven effect of these pesticides on these 3 chronic human health effects. So on the left-hand side here with the DNA, you see the carcinogenicity. Then below that is the neurotoxicity. And on the right-hand side, you see the effect on reproduction and development toxicity. In gray, that means there are no data. And sorry, I forgot to mention, we looked at these data according to a database from the EU, which you can see at the bottom. That's where the link is, where you find all the information on the different pesticide toxicities. So the gray part means that there's no data available. So this pesticide has never been registered anywhere else, or there has been no data on carcinogenicity, neurotoxicity, and reproduction toxicity. So this is the gray part in our little pie charts in these 3. The green one says it's proven that there's no effect on cancer. So in terms of all the 1,004 products registered in Nigeria, almost half of them are proven to not show any carcinogenic activities. Nevertheless, you see the orange circle means they're possible effects. So we need more proof to either distinguish if there's no effect or a proven effect. And the red one says it's absolutely proven that there is an effect on cancer. And that means for the case of Nigerian registered pesticides, these are 26 products being registered in Nigeria having proven carcinogenic activities, which, for example, includes active ingredients like chlorothalonil, oxyfluorophane, and permethrin. In terms of neurotoxicity, it looks even worse. You can see the red cycle here, the red piece or in this chart is even bigger. So we have 244 products which are proven to be neurotoxic. These are, for example, chlorpyrifos, bifenthrin, and dichlorphos. And similar to reproduction and development toxicity, proven 262 products, including carbofuran, dimethoate, and carbendazim. In terms of environmental health effects, there can be so many effects, effects on soil quality, birds, wildlife, etc. So we picked only 2 of them, which is the effect on bees, or in general pollinators, and the effect on the bottom here. You can see the warning symbol. You can see it most of the time on labels of pesticide products, which means toxic to aquatic systems. And we found that 40% of all products being registered in Nigeria are toxic or very toxic to bees. That includes carbofuran, fipronil, and profenophos, for example. There are studies out who actually looked at decrease in honeybees in Nigeria, and I just gave you here one example, but there is not really a link between pesticide use and honeybees, so we don't know what is actually going on. Do these pesticides have an impact? And even 47%, so almost half of all the products are very toxic or toxic to fish, including, for example, bifenthrin. And there are many studies out there looking at quite high concentrations in water and soil already in Nigeria. And this is quite worrying because we assuming that not every farmer knows about these type of effects. And if we look at the human health effects, we see quite often that farmers don't wear the protection gear, they spraying with bare hands or no shoes, etc., etc. I think we all know about that. But also farmers don't know about the toxicity towards bees and aquatic systems. And I think that is quite tricky if farmers regularly using these pesticides, but don't know how they can actually prevent the effect on the biodiversity. So we were also interested in terms of the registration status in Europe for all these pesticides being registered in Nigeria. So remember, 1,004 products have been registered in Nigeria, and we found that actually 402 products, which is the red part in this chart, are not approved in Europe anymore. So they have been approved, but they have been withdrawn, sometimes due to their human health effects, environmental effects, persistence, etc. So that is quite a lot. That's almost half of the pesticides registered are not approved in Europe anymore. And that's equal to 57 active ingredients. Now, we were then interested in looking at the strategies and policies who might influence the pesticide use. And I just want to mention 3. I'm sure there are much, much more. But it seems to us that most of the policies who are in place or who have been in place, emphasizing very much the support for inputs for crop production based on conventional agriculture. So the agriculture promotion policy, for example, recognizes the possible effects of pesticides on human health, but not necessarily the effects on the environment when soil and water are contaminated. And this is quite surprising because we read quite often that policy makers are very much aware of a decrease in biodiversity, land degradation, increase in land degradation, and increase in pollution. And the pest management strategy in this agriculture promotion policy seems to promote only the safe use of pesticides rather than using fewer pesticides. Another one is the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan under the Ministry of Budget and National Planning, and that recognizes actually the land degradation and the pressing pollutions as pressing environmental concerns, but no sustainable agricultural techniques are promoted in this plan. And it's rather the opposite. Within this Economic Recovery and Growth Plan, the Growth Enhancement Support Scheme, which we believe is not in place anymore, but it was in place, clearly promoted high input agriculture that depends on pesticide use. And they were even subsidizing pesticides which are very toxic and which are not registered in Europe anymore. The Nigerian Economic Sustainability Plan, as a response to COVID-19, aims to support smallholder farmers directly or through outgrower schemes with services and inputs, including land clearing, plowing, seeds, etc., but also pesticides. And it also provides low interest for input financing. It's not clear to us if pesticides are included. And we also read that there's a fee reduction for registration of products by NAFDAC, which is also not clear for us if pesticides are included in this part. Now, moving to the gaps, there's definitely, we identified definitely a data gap. But this is not necessarily only in Nigeria, to be fair. That's a problem in the whole Africa and even worldwide, that we have insufficient data on import and the use of pesticides. There is also a lack of environmental monitoring programs. We don't know if the soil, water is contaminated with pesticides on a regular basis, because it seems that there is no pesticide analysis regularly going on in environmental systems. And we also don't know the impact on biodiversity, although we know many pesticides are used who have quite an impact on bees and aquatic systems. And coming back to the food residues, MRLs are frequently exceeded due to export measurements, and some scientific publications show various high levels, but the local market, how much the local market is impacted, is unfortunately unknown. We also identified a couple of lacks in the regulation and registration. So first of all, we realized that the registration is quite, or the regulatory body is quite fragmented. So NAFDAC is responsible for the registration, whereas the Nigeria Agricultural Quarantine Service under the Ministry of Agriculture and Development is responsible for the residue monitoring for export certification and for pest monitoring. Standards Organization of Nigeria under the Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment is responsible for developing and enforcing standards and for setting up laboratories for analysis. And on the other hand, the National Environmental Standards and Regulation Enforcement is then in charge of the enforcement of regulations. And last but not least, the Department of Food and Drug Service under the Department of Health is responsible for developing policies, guidelines, and programs to ensure food safety for Nigeria. And it seems to us that there is not really a lot or enough interaction and collaboration going on between these agencies to really ensure a functioning pesticide registration, regulation, and enforcement system. One very important other gap in the regulation and registration we identified is the national adaptation of the pesticide registration. So the risk-based evaluation of pesticides is not adapted to Nigerian conditions. So pesticides are very often just registered without adapting the international test results one receives in the dossier to local conditions, such as local species, local climate, local diet, and very important to the mitigation measures. And just a couple of words to mitigation measures. Many pesticides, for example, in Europe, are registered for use only if certain mitigation measures are in place to protect the environment and the human health. So only if one actually implements these mitigation measures, one is allowed to use this pesticide. For example, a buffer zone to rivers, for example, for bifenthrin, or the timing and location of spraying to protect bees, or the use of protection to protect the spray operator and the farmer, or the pre-harvest interval to protect operators and consumers to reduce the food residues. Very often, these mitigation measures are not known by the farmer and often unrealistic under Nigerian conditions. We also identified that there is quite an intransparent process. We don't know which data are considered in the registration and how the decision about the registration is being made. And the last one is the re-evaluation. There are so many new data on the effects of pesticides and also possibilities for better alternatives that there needs to be a system in place for regular re-registration of pesticides. And last one, before I come to the last slide, we also identified a clear lack in terms of sustainable agriculture techniques. So we identified there is a lack of awareness looking at the literature. Farmers don't know about toxicity of pesticides and the different precautions which are actually should be stated and should be transferred to the farmer. They also don't know about possible alternatives and very often not about sustainable pest control and farming. There is a lack of a biopesticide legislation, so no guidance and registration pathways for biopesticides and biocontrol, which are the backbones for more sustainable agriculture, moving away from pesticides. And there's also a lack of policies. So there is the pesticide policy, which has been announced in 2019. And there is also the policy on integrated, or the plan on integrated pest management, which was prepared in 2016, but nothing was updated so far in the public. And what we've seen in the integrated pest management plan, that one was more focusing on, again, on the safe use of pesticides rather than reduction of pesticide use. And there are no policies on organic farming and agroecology. Now, I think we see quite a bit of potential for the upcoming national pesticide policy. If it's done very well, it could combine all the different fragmented responsibilities, policies, and guidelines. And through that, it could enable a really good functioning pesticide management system. It could also ensure a protective and scientifically sound and locally adapted registration procedure, adapted to Nigerian situations. And it could embed a clear goal to reduce the reliance on pesticides, specifically on the toxic pesticides, and specifically also on the pesticides who are withdrawn in Europe, because this is quite a barrier for export. If they are withdrawn in Europe, the MRLs are very low. So it's very hard for someone who is still using these pesticides to export to the European countries. And also it could be collaborating for the effective development of alternatives to be used in the integrated pest management plan. The last slide, strategies and policies promoting sustainable agriculture, definitely step by step, the integrated pest management plan, which should focus on the reduction in the use of toxic pesticides. And the pest control should include mechanical, cultural, and biological strategies. And only as a last result, if all the other three are failing, pesticide use should be recommended. The second step is then to move towards organic farming. And I think we all know what that entails. But one could even go one step further to go towards agroecology, which combines not only the local, but the new scientific, technological, innovative knowledge, and applies the ecological and social approaches to agriculture systems. So that farming is not only providing food, but also providing safe food, cultural and social and environmental benefits. So I thank you very much, and I'm looking forward to questions and interaction.
Thank you, Silke, for this comprehensive summary of the study. We'll go into questions and answers after we went through all of the presentations. Again, for all of you to know, the study is available on our webpage, www.ng.boell.org. I also put the link into the chat for you to just click on and then be able to access that study. But for now, I would like to invite Dr. Bukar Ali Usman, who is the Director of Veterinary Medicines and Allied Products of the National Agency for Food and Drug Administration and Control, NAFDAC, to speak. He's representing the Director General of NAFDAC, and we're very glad to have you, Dr. Usman, and please go ahead with your presentation. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. I think let me share my screen. Thank you, Mr. Moderator, Joxin Yokshita. I believe I call your name correctly, and the other distinguished panelists and participants who are listening to us. And thank you for the opportunity to explain some of the issues. I want to believe if I will go my presentation in detail, that will answer some of the points raised by Dr. Silke on some of the issues, but we have our email for further, maybe we will give you a detailed explanation if needs be. And my topic is as shown on the screen, and I will just briefly explain it under the following content. It is very clear that, maybe let me start on a broader perspective. Then, just as we are seeing the statement by the new Director General of WTO, where she said agriculture is a traditional area that's critically important to many countries, both the developed and the developing, as well as emerging markets. It is already a record that Nigeria is one of the countries that are looking for alternative away from the oil, and agri is one of the major sector that is expected to play a critical role there. So the pesticides plays a critical role in the success of agricultural sector. It is important in terms of food safety and food security. So the regulation of pesticides has a direct and indirect effects on all the dimensions of food security. I tried to talk about stay within our topic, the food security and food safety. So NAFDAC as a regulatory system is designed to ensure that the pesticide products are not injurious to the handler, plants, animals, and the environment. Some of the points raised about products not being used in EU or other developed world that are still being used, I want to ensure our participants and the listeners that NAFDAC has already initiated some process of deregistering some of these products based on available scientific evidences. Just as I said, this will form like basis of the whole topic. We're talking about food security, food safety, and why regulation of pesticides is really important. So the pesticides, most of the explanation, the previous speaker has already said it. It might, improper use and higher use of it might affect the food availability by way of contaminating the food with high residue, which will also have that food that is contaminated is not only being wholesome for human, but even for animal, because the residue will finally find itself in the human table. And once that food is no longer available, so the access, which is another cardinal aspect of food security, is also affected, which means not many population can have enough food that is required of their normal living. So also it will affect the utilization. So the stability as a factor of, as a dimension in food security is that the food availability, food access and utilization must be stable, must be on continuous basis. So the whole of it can affect the nutritional status of the individual. It will have a serious effect on the health, which will affect the livelihood. It worsens the humanitarian situation of individuals. So regulation of these pesticides is very, very important. NAFDAC, under the legislation, this is the legislative arm that gives NAFDAC the mandate to regulate the issue of pesticides. So NAFDAC actually regulate and control the importation, the exportation, manufacture, advertisement, distribution, and sales and use of food, drug, cosmetic, medical devices, bottled water, and chemicals, under which the issue of pesticides falls. So there are several regulatory measures put in place. So maybe I would want to, after my presentation, some of the points raised by Dr. Silky, I will be highlighting them as it comes. So the products so far registered undergo the following regulatory measures or steps to ensure that the product is safe and is efficacious, so that the ultimate end of that process is giving the product a marketing authorization. So some of the measures put in place, which all these points that I've been raising, there are several guidelines, there are links and some guidance documents on the NAFDAC website. And in case where there is no any clear explanation, I believe the general public might contact us or can contact us so that we can give detailed information about it. So the product will be registered, and then the product, for it to be registered, it has to undergo through quality control. So you see, another point that is raised here is mostly NAFDAC follow the issue of codex. And it is already a known fact that the EU has a relatively more strict and stringent measure put in place compared to the codex, which is more wide. But gradually, I believe Nigeria, as part of signatory to most of these important organization, is also adopting the most safest measures. But so far, most of our quality control parameters will follow that of codex. So advertisement control, so that we make sure that pesticides are not advertised anyhow in such a way that it can affect the human population, it will be injurious to the environment, and so on. So the facility where the product is coming will be subjected to good manufacturing practice. So the other good practices, such as good warehouse practice, good storage practice, are some of the regulatory measures that are actually employed by NAFDAC to ensure that the product are registered. So the field trial evaluation of new pesticides molecule and biopesticides. So well, there are guidelines on this, and then there's guideline on biopesticides, biofertilizers, even though they are in a draft stage now. I believe the agency is pushing forward to ensure that it has been gazetted and it will be published on the website. But so far, we have those drafts, and we encourage for these bioproducts just to reduce the dependence and over-dependence on the chemical pesticides. So as also one of the regulatory measures put in place is the issuance of a permit for the importation. So the data is being developed, and though it's not published on the website, the full data of the importation, and then I want to believe we can work with Dr. Silky and her team on providing some necessary data on that issue of importation. So there is this routine post-marketing surveillance. The NAFDAC across the country, we have offices in all the 36 states of the Federation, including FCT. And then our officers frequently go from time to time to actually inspect, do a post-marketing surveillance. Pesticides, just like any other product, it has its own specific storage requirement. So the hawking of these products, improper storage of this, or storage of this product, along with some other products that are not supposed to be, are all practices that the NAFDAC frowns at, and offenders are actually subjected and prosecuted. So at the port level, those CEO and the airport, we have the directorate that inspect all the products. Actually, they take samples for compliance. So these are some of the regulatory measures, all to ensure that the product that is available out there for market is safe and is of good quality, so that it can give a reasonable protection, and it will reduce that effect of fake products that normally do. What people do normally say, if you double more, you will get a better action. So these are some of the measures we all curtail. So any product that is being, somebody want to import, a field trial samples, the permit will be given. So it's part of the control. So we are developing some of this. We have some of this data, and we are developing all this data on this. So the issuance of health certificate at the Port Inspection Directorate for export, then the enforcement to mop up fake, adulterated, and unwholesome pesticides and agrochemicals. The inspector arm of the NAFDAC, along with other regulatory officers, they actually work toward that. All these are regulatory measures to ensure that fake are not there, even though we are having a lot of challenges about the issue of porous border. More are coming through the unmanned borders of the country. Then outreach, industrial outreach, that is very critical, because just as the earlier presenter made, we also identified there is need to educate the farmer. There is need to let all the necessary stakeholders about this, on this issue of safe and responsible use, so that if possible, to even avoid where possible. So these are some of the measures. So the challenges are just enormous. And I just try to put it in this way. So the inappropriate use, as is being explained, it is unfortunate that majority of those that finally use this product, they lack this basic formal of knowing some of this knowledge. So it is up to the regulatory agency and other governments and ministries and departments that have that mandate to actually educate those who are using the product, from the farmer to those who sell it, and then on all these pro and cons of these pesticides. So, and that is what the agency is also actually strongly advocating and is also doing. We are of the opinion that there should be adequate knowledge of these negative consequences of improper use of this product, or even the toxicity, how these products are being used. So one of the major challenge, faking, adulteration, and substandard of this product. Recently in Kano, the Kano NAFDAC office were able to carry out a raid on a facility, uncompleted building. They are packaging and repackaging some of these products, even including some antibiotics. So such things is really a major challenge. Like Nigeria has very wide border with some countries, and there are most of these borders were actually not manned. So products do move in and out of the country through that, including fake and substandard products. So we are doing our little best, and also working on how best to reduce that. But the major information is we want to arm the general public about the information so that they will know how to identify the good and standard, and then also how to use this product. So the sales and distribution of this, NAFDAC recently decided to, as part of the control measures, it is common knowledge that you can see in some of the village markets, some people do take these pesticides and start hawking anyhow. So that has already been banned, and the NAFDAC offices across the state are already working on that. We are working with relevant state ministries of agri and other relevant ministries to enforce that. And one of the strategy to enforce that is continuous education of the general public about that bad practice. So also the issue of unapproved pesticides is also boils down to the banned borders. So earlier I've mentioned that there are some products who are already banned, like for example, the paraquat has already been banned, atrazine is already in the process of being phased out, and some other products. So we will work on some of these aspects that is being presented, and already our research team, they are already working on those lists of those products that have serious public health consequences with a view of taking necessary regulatory measures. So on the terms of the NAFDAC and some other officials, the insufficient manpower to man all these unmanned borders across the country. We don't have enough personnel to do that, but I believe NAFDAC is working closely with Nigerian Customs and other government agencies to do their bit. In just by way of those few things, so safe and responsible use of this product is really important because people don't even adhere to the regulators or the manufacturers' guideline on the level. Continuous farmer education, capacity building on good agricultural practices. So the farmers need to be given the knowledge. They need to know the danger of all these things. So these are, I believe, some of the way forward. Then we are also suggesting that there's a solution to reduce pesticides, and also in order to reduce the effect of the pesticides, the integrated pest management concept has to be improved, has to be encouraged. That will help in reducing. Now will not only emphasize the safe and responsible, but also in using fewer of these pesticides and also thinking of the alternatives. So the use of pest-resistant and high-yielding cultivators will help reduce the amount of pesticides being used. These are some of the ways I believe that can help. So the prevention of contamination of water with chemical residues, they are also very, very important. So we are strongly suggesting, just as Dr. Silke clearly mentioned, we don't have a comprehensive data on MRI rates. So the development of that will help at least to even argue in Codex and some other international organization. So by way of conclusion, I would want to say pesticides regulation has a critical role in ensuring food security and food safety, while at the same time maintaining healthy agro-ecosystem. NAFDAC has the mandate to regulate and control the use of pesticide products to enhance food security in Nigeria. And thank you very much for the opportunity. And there are points I want to leave. If time is there, I will explain on some of these points. NAFDAC website, we have a lot of information on the registration process, which is very transparent. Then the issue of decisions in the registration, it is very transparent, it's open. So people can go to the website, and when you have any inquiry, you can write us. You will be given this information. We are not hiding it. So the guidelines, as I said, for biopesticides, bioproduct, they are in their draft stage, and I want to believe as soon as it is approved, it will be on the website. Thank you for listening, and thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Dr. Usman, for this excellent presentation, laying out the various roles that NAFDAC is playing and the various challenges that you are facing as an agency. Of course, we're glad to hear that you're already, in many ways, thinking in the direction that we are also pointing towards to. And of course, we are glad to learn that you, for example, in the process of re-evaluating the list of registered products so as to filter out those that are highly toxic and already banned in Europe and other jurisdictions. Thank you so much. We'll go into questions and answers, as I said, after the last presentation, which will now be delivered by Dr. Ebenezer Ida Chaba, who is representing the Director General of the Nigeria Agricultural Quarantine Service, Dr. Vincent Izebe. Important to know, as Silke has already mentioned and others, the NAQS is in charge of developing the national pesticide policy, an important piece of policy that has great potential to deal with a number of the problems that we've been talking about here today. So, Dr. Ida Chaba, please go ahead.
All right, thank you very much, Jochin, the organizer and head of office, and all other presenters and participants. The issue of pesticide residue has become a very serious one and has come to the front burner as it is now. I'm sitting representing Dr. Vincent Isege, who is unavoidably absent. And so whatever I'm going to be presenting will be on his behalf. Now, we're looking at the ongoing pesticide policy reforms in Nigeria, the progress that we have made, challenges that are still deviling us, and areas needing support. And then this is a situation report we're going to be giving. Most of what we are going to be looking at are already established issues. They are common, and we are all virtually aware of what is going on in the agricultural sector in Nigeria with regards to export. So in context, we are going to be using the cowpea as a basis and a case study to explain what this pesticide residue matter is all about. Nigeria is an agronomic country, and then we are into a lot of production. At the last statistics, we are about the largest producer of cowpea in the world, cassava, yam. And the percentages in the global market is high, and then we're expected to be very heavy players in the market when it comes to some of this product. But then again, we have challenges when it comes to issues of quality and residues that we have come to discover in recent times. As at 2015, when we first got the first alert or the first ban on the beans that we sent to the European Union, and it was sent back to us, the complaint was that the pesticide residue was high and it was dangerous to human health. Unfortunately, to date, the ban has not been lifted as it is, and then trying to solve that matter, a roadmap and a kind of work plan was developed in 2018, but then the non-implementation of that work plan led to another extension in the ban from the European Union. That has been the fundamentals of the whole issue. And then everybody and every relevant agency and concerned people have been trying to find a way to go forward to resolve this matter. NAQS efforts to address the issues have been in multifaceted dimensions. Now, what we did was to go ahead to do a nationwide survey of farms and then markets and warehouses and stores where these products are actually produced, with a view to actually identifying where could the problem be, where is it emanating from, and where are we beginning to develop these heavy levels of pesticides that are being used. Those surveys were carried out in most of our heavy production areas. Kano, Oyo, Benue were pilot states that we use to develop that. And then a lot of other things that we tried to do was to develop a kind of export certification value chain with Cowpea and Beans Association of Nigeria on how best to safeguard the beans value chain. Now, what that means is that we try to get together all those that were in the value chain that had to do with cowpea and to discuss on how we can improve on our production using as minimal as possible synthetic pesticides, and then being sure that whatever we produce and is going to go into the market, even in the domestic market, is fit for consumption, and also the ones going for export. You'll see some of the pictures of some of those interventions and those visits and sampling that were done around the country. And then the results of this analysis on the dredges from 5 major producing states are presented in the tables that you'll find below. Now, in those tables, we found out that yes, actually, and of a truth, the residue levels in some of those products were actually high. And the next thing we did was to find out why we will have these levels of residue as high as this in our produce. And then that research led us to find out that misapplication of the pesticide was the major problem. The use of contaminated and adulterated pesticides is another one. Miscalibration of them pesticides is another problem. Frequency of use of the pesticide also was found out as a major culprit in this excessive application of pesticides. Now, in the course of developing that export value chain, again, we found out that a lot of the heavy levels were found in the warehouses and the markets as against the ones that were sampled from the farm. And what that told us was that the farmers will use the pesticides in the course of their production, which is what is necessary when you have to have good production. But then when they have done that and they've harvested, we found out that the middlemen that buy from them load their own level of pesticides to preserve those commodities. And then when the farmer, the exporter, now comes to buy again, he too goes ahead to add more of these pesticides. At the end of it, when you begin to check for the levels, you begin to find out they are very, very high. And those are not acceptable in the international market. Now, the quarantine service going forward, what we tried to do was to put out a lot of information out there that will help to get our people to know what to do and what not to do. First was to identify the reasons for the rejection, and then went ahead to identify some of the reasons why even some of these things are rejected. Those ones are all enumerated in the document that you can see on your screen now. It spans from lack of the documentation to wrong labeling to forgery to cancellations to improper export procedure and exporting prohibited items. Those are a lot of things that lead to rejection sometimes, aside from the maximum residue level that has been indicated. A lot of this advocacy is going on with a view to sensitizing the farmers as the basic and the fundamental producers as to how to go about the use of these pesticides. A lot of these awareness are in publications that can be found on some of these websites that have been presented in the slide as it stands. Going forward, we try to do a lot of collaborations too with partners and relevant agencies and concerned bodies with a view to finding out how we can mitigate these effects. Federal Ministry of Agriculture, as our mother ministry, have been in the forefront of this fight to reduce this. Why? Is because the agency that is actually, or the department that is actually responsible for disseminating information to the farmers is domiciled with the ministry. That's where we have our extension workers who actually interact with the farmers on a day-to-day basis. And these are found in the local areas. They understand their languages, and then they can go ahead and explain these things to them. Otherwise, our own reports that are going out are mostly in English, and then a little bit much more relevant to the educated class rather than the domestic farmer. So the Federal Ministry of Agriculture is collaborating with us very seriously to see how we can go ahead and disseminate this information as much as possible to the farmers. With regards to the pesticides regulation, 2018, the Federal Ministry of Agriculture, in collaboration with the NAQS and all other relevant agencies, started to discuss about the pesticide policy. Now, a lot of work was done. Input was taken from all those that were necessary, and then that document is ready. It's just the validation that is holding on now. It will be transmitted to the minister, and then further steps will be taken. Now, that document is supposed to help us to put very direct and very clear restrictions and checks on the import and usage of every of the chemicals that is coming into the country. And the usage of those chemicals will be specified in those policies. What can be used and what cannot be used, and the issues that surround all the necessary things that has to do with the pesticides. Now, part of that again is to try to develop biopesticides. Like Dr. Bukaro said from the NAFDAC end, the way to go is to actually begin to move away from synthetic pesticides to biopesticides. Now, NAQS, in recent times, in the past 6 months, we've been working with some research institutes, universities, to actually analyze some of these biopesticides. The most recent one is the trials that we're carrying out on the extracts of neem oil. Analysis has been done on them, results have been gotten, and then we're trying to move to the field to see how we can test the efficacy of this or the field and in storage. Now, these are all issues that the NAQS is looking at, and then we're trying to see how we can move forward. Now, the control of agro-pesticides will still reside with the NAFDAC. It still resides with NAFDAC instead of the Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development, thereby inhibiting a direct link with the end users. There are no export control measures put in place as required in the EU regulation, which we had agreed on earlier. And then there's insufficient sensitization on the proper utilization of agro-pesticides to reduce cases of misapplication. Now, those are some of the immediate issues that we are contending with as it stands now. The way forward is to try to put in place certain structures that will help us to control how production is done, how storage is done, before it now gets to the market and ultimately to the export market. Now, that is part of the reason why government some time ago set up what we call the National Strategic Grains Reserve. We expect that such reserves will have designated silos that will tend to products that are meant for export so that we can control the application of pesticides of such products, and even for the ones that are going to be used in the domestic market too. We're also looking at a situation where government should be able to institute effective export control measures as required in the EU regulation. Now, how are they going to do that? Is to get the relevant bodies that are supposed to be at the exit and entry point and their proper places. Because once they are there, they can check on whatever is going out and whatever is coming, so that we can do the appropriate tests to know how these products are before they leave. Increase the sensitization on the wrongful application of pesticides is very, very important. That is a duty for everybody to carry out. Anybody that is in the value chain or in the agricultural hemisphere is supposed to be able to disseminate information as to how to go about the usage of some of these agro pesticides. To diligently seek alternative biopesticide, I will still mention that those are some of the ways that we are looking at to see how we can begin to reduce some of these challenges we have. In conclusion, a critical time to escalate and decisively deal with the issue is now, because if we do not do that, then we are going to be having issues with our exports, many of our products into the international market. NAQs also are expected to be returned to their various and appropriate places and at the exit and entry points in Nigeria. That will help to control the import and export of some of these commodities, even when it comes to the pesticides itself and most of the agro products. I think that's about it. If there are any other questions that we have not looked at, we'll be open to take them. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Idachaba, for this presentation and also for the case study, which showed that it's also as important to look at the various parts of the value chain, and not just at farm level, but in this case also at the level of storage, where the problems may lie, rather than in farmers using too much pesticides. So with that, through all presentations, we quite behind time a little bit, but I still want to give an opportunity to participants to ask questions and make comments. Please raise your hands, as some of you are already starting to do, if you would like to ask a question. I would also like to ask you to please introduce yourself, let us know at whom the question is directed, and please be to the point and short, so that as many people as possible have the opportunity to also put in their question, as we don't have too much time left. Maybe one question from my side to all of the speakers, for starters, is that listening to all the presentation here today, you can hear there's a lot of concern and a lot of understanding of the problem, and you've done your research and you really know what needs to be done. Yet also looking at some of the questions that have come through the Q&A function, there is this concern that on the ground, realities are still very different. It doesn't filter through. And my question therefore would be, what are the challenges also from your perspective as organizations to really make sure that the ideas and solutions that you have are being implemented to an extent where they actually have an effect on the ground? That's just a general question from my side, but now I'd like to give the word to the audience. We will start with Abiola Oke. Please go ahead. You can you unmuted and you can speak.
Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. This is Dr. Abiola Oke from National Horticultural Research Institute, NIHOT Ibadan. I have listened to all the presenters, and it's been wonderful. Now, let me start with Selke. She mentioned the lack of collaboration between organizations. That I want to agree with, that NAFDAC, Quarantine, SON, all the regulatory bodies are not synergizing, and especially with research institutes. Now, you asked me why I said that. According to NAFDAC pesticide regulation registration for 2019, number 5, it says that efficacy assessment of pesticide before registration shall be monitored by NAFDAC at approved research institutes. This is not obtainable. It is not happening. But people bring their product to us in research institute for testing, and we refer them back to NAFDAC to go and get letter from NAFDAC, a referral from NAFDAC, which we don't get. You know, that is one of the reasons why you just see importers just bring in their things. You know, they just put aside the research institute and then go to NAFDAC and go and do their thing. But like the Dr. Booker said, that NAFDAC do not have the capacity to do this research. So NAFDAC need research institutes that have mandates for specific crops to collaborate with them. Now, Dr. Booker talked about IPM to be encouraged. I want to say here that NIHOT Ibadan, we have developed and we have formulated 2 biopesticides. And this biopesticide is being adopted by FMAD today. In fact, it was distributed as palliative to farmers during this past COVID-19, era. That's about around May last year. And it's being purchased from NIHOT, all the time from the ministry. Now, concerning guidelines for biopesticides, I want to say here that NAFDAC should please carry along research institutes, because they are the ones that have research for formulation of biopesticide and other things. You need them. We need you. We all need ourselves for this country to become better. And another suggestion that I want to give here is that in labeling of pesticides, NAFDAC need to consider using the IRAC MOA, that is Insecticide Resistance Action Committee mode of action. You see, like he said, you find a farmer using an active ingredient in different brands, maybe 4 different brands with the same active ingredient. But if insecticides are labeled according to the group, that is the IRAC mode of action group, it says this has, whether it's in group 3A, group 4A, group 1A. When a farmer sees that number, he knows that whatever pesticide that has the same number has the same active ingredient, and he will not be compelled, or he will not be, pushed into buying the same thing as they are advised to do. Another issue that I actually want to talk about here.
Please make this your last point so that others can also get it.
All right. Abuse of pesticide along the value chain. I want to suggest that there's lack of established certified private IPM, which I think we should begin to put in place in Nigeria. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for these questions. We now go to Living Green. Please go ahead and talk.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh yeah, mine is more of a question. Okay, so I wanted to find out, and this is to the different parts of the speakers who spoke today. So I wanted to ask, first of all, how does this national pesticide policy reform, how does it promote food safety and food security? And then also, when they talked about, both presenters talked about the unavailability of data on negative impact of pesticide use in local markets. So is there actually anything being done to do that? Will this new policy also affect that? Which is good, and then those who are not farmers but also part of stakeholders in the agricultural process. So okay, so also what are they doing? Final question: what are they doing to prevent or maybe control illegal import and export of toxic pesticides? Thank you.
Thank you so much. We now take a third and last question from Timmy Tope.
Yes, good afternoon. I want to appreciate our presenters. Indeed, very, very loaded presentation. Some of my question has been asked. I am an environmental health officer that works in Obafemi Awolowo University Teaching Hospital in environmental department. And we used to do pest and vector control. Last few weeks, I traveled down to Ibadan, precisely Jubaili Agrotech Company, to make some inquiries. And I discovered that most of their products in market has been adulterated. So my question is, how can this particular body just harmonize, release together the NAFDAC, the SON, even the HEORECON? The HEORECON is Environmental Health Officers Union Council of Nigeria, so that we can have a very good product instead of adulterated products we'll be using in doing pest and control and even for preservation of our food and agricultural produce. Thank you. That's my question.
Thank you. Okay. So let's go back to the panelists. Considering the last question that was just asked, but also then going back to Abiola's point around synergy between actors, missing communication with research institutions, or how could that be strengthened? That was particularly kind of targeted at NAFDAC, I believe, and then the other question by Living Green to, I guess, the NAQS around the pesticide policy reform and how that will promote food safety and food security, and what could or will be done around illegal imports. Who would like to start? Dr. Usman, would you like to start with responses from the side? And I see you also raised your hand. Maybe you also do have a question to one of the panelists.
Thank you very much, moderator. I wanted to maybe educate Dr. Oke and other participants that NAFDAC collaborate with as many research institutes as possible, and also the universities. So the condition is anybody wants to register any product, and that product is new and it has not been evaluated before in Nigeria. So depending on the product and the speciality of the research institute, we refer them to them so that they will conduct the field trial. While at the time of monitoring, they will invite NAFDAC officials to join the researchers on the field to monitor and take data at the same time. We don't just sit down and for them to send the data only. So maybe Dr. Oke should maybe contact his colleague and know that we've referred to one research, something by First Independent Global Limited. We received the invitation on 26 February 2019, and our inspectors have visited the NIHOT on 25th of July 2019. They actually went and did the research. So we collaborate and we rely on the expertise of experts across the country because we don't have the facility to conduct the research ourselves. They are sister reputable government agencies, so we rely on their research work. So please just be informed that we do that. Maybe that particular work has not reached your directorate or department. The issue of, yes, please.
No, please go ahead, go ahead.
Yes, so the NAFDAC work with other people. So the issue of the draft guideline on the biopesticides and bio something, we, Standard Organization of Nigeria and are the one that set the standard, okay. Then all the stakeholders this was circulated, stakeholders were invited, inputs were received, and already from experts from across the academia, the research institute, inputs and expert input have been received. That's why earlier I said we have the draft now, waiting to be approved, and then to be published on our website. So we carry along and collaborate as much as we can. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Idachaba, would you like to respond to some of the questions raised?
Yes. With regards to collaboration with research institutes and other agencies, yeah, as much as possible, I think there's some element of collaboration. It's just that sometimes when these issues come up, you tend to not be able to reach as many or all the people you need to reach. And so we begin to have patches of complaints that some were not carried along. Well, we'll look at that and then see how we can get that improved on going forward. Now, how these reforms will promote food security, that is the pesticide policy reform. Now, policies are statements of what you want in place to help you to carry out your activities within your region or your sphere. So, having understood what the problems we are facing now with regards to pesticides, it was not a matter of coming back to sit down and look at where were the faults in the old regulation and where can we improve to be able to control that which is now in the front burner. So inside of that reform is the control of what comes in, the ones that are not supposed to come, labeling as it were, as Dr. Oke did mention now, coding of some of these agro-pesticides. All these are things that are going to be reflected in the pesticide policy that will help us to shore up our production and protect crops from damage from pests, as it were. The issue of data, like Dr. Skills mentioned, it's not something that is peculiar to Nigeria or Africa, as it were. It's a situation that comes up when you have unregistered population that are into the practice of agriculture. Now, with the establishment of NALDA, which is now beginning to reclaim large areas of land to convert them to estates for farming, it becomes easier for regulatory bodies to go into those large estates and then monitor the usage of some of these chemicals and of these inputs that are used. That will likely take care of it. In climes where you are trying to do commercial agriculture, you have them not as patches, not at subsistence level, but as corporate bodies and corporate farms, where you have experts actually taking care of some of these aspects. That will help. Now, with regards to control of the import of some of these illegal and adulterated ones, well, it's a multifaceted one. There are agencies of government that are placed at the border areas. The NAQS is one of them. NAFDAC is there, a standard organization. In fact, chief amongst them is Customs and Excise. They have all the group of items that can come in and the ones that are not coming. So those are the areas where those controls can be done. But then we know that our border lines are very, very large, and so it's difficult for us to man every of them. So we still find situations where there are leakages, and from there we have some of this illegal importation coming up. But the government again is doing a lot to see how they can plug all these holes, and then going forward, we hope that we'll be able to improve on our restrictions to these chemicals that come in illegally. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Silke, there wasn't really a question directed at you, but is there any points that you would like to raise or maybe also respond to what has been said by Dr. Usman or Dr. Itacha? Otherwise, I would go back to the participants for more questions.
Yeah, thank you to give me the word again. I think there are quite promising results out of the discussion so far, which are, for example, the proposed deregistration of some banned pesticides in Europe, like paraquat already banned and atrazine on its way. So for us, it would be very interesting which other ones are on its way to be phased out. Also that there's a biopesticide regulation in draft. So for us, it would be interesting to see when it's going to be out. Also that import data are available and that NAFDAC is willing to share it with us, also quite positive. But all in all, and also that there's the focus on beans and on developing agriculture sustainable strategies. Nevertheless, it's the export market. So what about the import? What about the local markets? And then also, for me, there's too much focus on safe use of pesticides rather than promoting alternative strategies. I haven't heard once the word or the phrase organic farming or agroecology, and even in the proposed pesticide policy, integrated pest management is not really mentioned. It was just basically on the export. And just one last sentence, the one sentence I heard that educated class versus just farmers, I think that phrase should change soon, because maybe we should move from an input intensive agriculture to a knowledge intensive agriculture, which means we have to also work on extension services and capacity building rather than just safe use of pesticides. That's my last word. Thank you.
Thank you, Sergey, for these points. Very important. Yes, there was also a question in the Q&A section asking when is the national pesticide policy available for the public. So there's lots of interest in that. Another interesting point that was raised in the Q&A section is what role does the polluter pay principle play actually in all of this? So how do we set the right incentives? How do we make sure that those who pollute the environment and so forth actually are disincentivized by having to pay harsh penalties for what they've done, through which you would, on the other hand, then also promote those who do the right thing and go with organic approaches, agroecology, and actually, while they do the farming, enhance biodiversity and promote the environment. So I will take 2 or 3 last questions, and then we have to wrap up. We're already almost 15 minutes over our time, but I think the discussion is very interesting. There's a lot of interest. If the panelists have another 15 minutes, then yes, I'll take questions from the audience again for one more and last round. So this time it is Professor Adeogun. Please go ahead with your question. And please be short and to the point, since we're really running out of time. Prof, are you there? Okay, there's no response. Then I will move on to Andrew Elo to ask his question.
Okay, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to ask a question. Thank you, my presenters, for all the wonderful presentation. Mine will come first as a comment, then a question. It's really very, very vital that we take a look at the issues of pesticides in agriculture. The fact remains that many of our farmers are 110% neck deep in the application of either pesticides or herbicides. In fact, they just can't do without pesticides or herbicides. So it is very important that we start advocating for education in terms of like what the first speaker talked about in the last comments, a different approach to farming, agroecological practices, organic farming, in as much as is quite expensive, the encouragement of the use of biopesticides, which are also biodegradable, so they don't form residues. Okay, so my question will be, some school of thoughts are looking at the use of genetic modification to solve issues of pesticides. For example, in Nigeria, some school of thought are advocating for the BT cowpea. That's the Bacillus thuringiensis cowpea, which is insect resistance. So some are saying that if we encourage the use of Bt cowpea, it will reduce the pesticide use, as well as increase or lift the ban on cowpea in Europe. So I want to find out from the presenters what's their take on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. And then now we go to Marianne Bassi.
Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Miriam Bassi. I'm from Friends of the Earth, Nigeria. I want to thank all the presenters. I've already sent my question. I didn't know I would get an opportunity to ask, but I've already typed it on the chat box. I want to ask the NAFDAC representative, why is there so much emphasis on pests and herbicides? I mean, even it's safe. I hear him say it's safe pesticides, and I mean, shouldn't we be talking about agroecology, organic fertilizers? I mean, the name itself is even scary, pest. Why will we be using pesticides to grow our food, to feed our people? It's already worrying. We're already banned. And he also said that they're looking at the scientists look at the pesticides, which are not very safe. I mean, the fact that it's banned in other countries, is it not worrying enough that, first of all, I mean, and in scientific, do no harm. You place a ban and then you do your research. It's of allowing to run amok in the market and people die or people are sick. Why not just place a ban, and if it is safe, then you bring it back? And then why not? And then the government is letting these chemicals, pesticides and herbicides in the market. Why trying to find out if they are safe or not? I mean, is it not worrying enough that it's banned elsewhere and we are using it in Nigeria? And my question is, why would we be promoting pests? I actually like what the last speaker said. I mean, there are other alternatives, agroecological solutions. Agroecology solutions specifies that you work in harmony in nature, not against it. Why are we in Nigeria promoting so much of pests, foreign solutions, imported solutions that don't really help our people? Why would we, there are organic solutions. I mean, even the farmers, if you speak to them, they will tell you they have a solution. So I'm just wondering, have you spoken, why are you not looking towards that direction? You're sort of trying to look more at pest, herbicides, and all those things that hinder and harm people. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So one very last question by Ghana. And then we wrap up and go back to
So thanks so much for this opportunity. I've actually conducted research on organic farming in Nigeria. And I've also experienced the challenges associated with organic farming in the United States as well. My question to the panelists is this: how much of a support in terms of research is the government willing to give to support the exploration of the potentials of agroecological farming approaches to addressing some of the pest and productivity challenges affecting farmers in Nigeria? Because the reality is that there is a difference between potential and there's a difference between what actually obtains at the farm level. You may have the potential if there is no adequate research to translate those potentials to what obtains at the farm level in terms of practicality. The potentials might not actually reflect. And this is one of the challenges facing the organic farming sector, because we spent massive amount of resources to make the conventional chemicalized agricultural system to produce the result it's producing, despite tons of negative externality effect. So my question to the panelists, and obviously to the Nigerian government, is that what are we doing to support the alternative in the aspect of research so that we can have spectrums of options? Because I've shifted from organic alone to spectrums of options. When you give 100% support to chemicalized agriculture, give this same amount of support to organic agriculture. So how much of a shift are we willing to do in this respect? And how do you want to go about it? Are you going to be collaborating with scientists in Nigeria or from across the world in order to make the knowledge of how organic can actually help enhance productivity available to farmers? Because if farmers don't have this knowledge, there's no way it's going to work. We are just going to be talking to an ideal situation. So I'd like to know from the government perspective what they've done and what they are willing to do going forward, exploring this option. Thank you.
Thank you, Ghana. Thank you for that important point. Okay, great. So let's go back to the panelists one last time. So yeah, there's basically 2 points. The one is what role you think GMOs should or should not play when it comes to the issue of pesticides. That's the one. The other, I think that's the point that Silke has raised, Marianne has raised, and Morgana has raised. What about alternatives, and where is the investment and focus on alternatives? And are we focusing too much on the conventional approach to agriculture and kind of making pesticides work in a sense, rather than really going alternative ways where we don't use pesticides at all? I will pick Dr. Idachaba first, and we go to Dr. Usman, and then Silke, if there's last thoughts from your side, you're also welcome to share them. Dr. Idachaba.
Yeah. Okay, hello.
Hello.
Thank you very much, the team. Now, Andrew emphasized on the issue of education. Yes, that's advocacy. We need to put the message out there on how to go about production with the minimal use of synthetic pesticides. The issue of GMO is a little bit controversial as it stands now. There are certain restrictions as to the level of the quantity or the kind of GMO you can put in the market. But there's a body that is actually responsible for biosafety in the country. So they will be in a better situation to answer that. Now, Miriam Bassi wanted to know why there was so much emphasis on pesticides. Now, just to make something very, very clear, the use of pesticide is not outrightly wrong. It is the arbitrary use and the uncontrolled use of this pesticide that is the problem we have. Nigeria's population, as conservative estimate as we see today, is about 200 million. Now, to be able to feed that population, you need to have commensurate production of crops and livestock and all that to be able to have that in the market. That is even for domestic consumption. Now, if you do not have some of these pesticides in use, there is no way you can feed this population. Agriculture is not wholly sustainable when we go into organics. Now, way back, you will know about shifting cultivation, crop rotation, and all the cultural methods of controls. Now, that is no longer possible. And so to control these things now, we need to use some level of pesticides. Like Dr. Silk did suggest, while we're looking at the pesticides, we will also be looking at the integrated pest management methods for control. So we can minimize the use of pesticides and then use all other biological agents and pesticides to help us to control. Mr. Ghana wanted to know if government had any support for bioecological farming. Well, like you did assert, organic farming is not cheap. At any level, it's not cheap at all. And so if government supports conventional farming, then we expect that they should be able to support organic farming too. If that policy is on ground, I don't have an idea yet, but then it is possible that proposals can be made to the Ministry of Agriculture and then probably the Federal Ministry of Finance and CBN, and maybe they can help out through their corporate programs and all the programs that they have for sustainable agriculture. That would be my take on those questions, unless there's another one I've left out. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Dr. Usman?
Thank you, moderator, for the opportunity. Maybe I will want to add more onto that, my colleague of Ida Chava, Madam Miriam, maybe you need to understand something. The topic we are talking about here is pesticides. That's why we do mention the issue of pests. So not that we emphasize pests over other measures. So we consider other measures as well. And you see, in order to be proactive, that's why we develop these biopesticides, fertilizer, all these bioproducts to enhance that we know the alternative is to reduce the pest. So the banning of product, even the EU or developed world, they have their process. There is an already laid down process of banning a product. So we are following that process, and I believe, like I said, paraquat, atrazine, and some other products, they are already in the pipeline. So as a regulator, for us to be looking like promoting one product over the other, it has some challenges for us. So that's why we talk the way we're talking now. But the topic is on pesticides. And if you are talking of pesticides, you should talk about pests as well. Not that emphasizing pests over any other thing. So I believe the issue of cowpea, I believe the quarantine colleague have made comment. So far, it is still undergoing some of the bureaucratic processes, but NAFDAC is already on the board of the national, this NAFDAC, the National Biotechnology Agency and Biosafety Management Agency. NAFDAC is already on the board. So I think thank you very much for the listening.
Dr. Osman. Silke, some last reflections from your side before we wrap up.
Yes, just very briefly. Pesticides are definitely needed in degraded systems, and I believe many of the agricultural areas are degraded. Maybe we're talking about monoculture of one crop with degraded soil, maybe even bad water quality. So, and I think one needs more pesticides in the future if one doesn't change towards a different system. I'm not here to promote any agroecology, but I really would like to support the last speakers who were asking about what about the research in agroecology, organic farming, and I followed lots of examples in many other African countries from farmers changing from conventional to organic and agroecology. And it's not necessarily more expensive, but one just needs to have more knowledge. And I think that could be one step also to get towards less pesticides, and not only less pesticides. I think it's not okay that 40% of the pesticides being used in Nigeria are already withdrawn in Europe. And it might be Europe has more strict regulations than the US or any other countries, but nevertheless, they are withdrawn for some specific reason. And this includes human health and environment and so on. So I would really like to support the move towards not safe pesticide use and industrial outreach for training, but rather looking at alternatives, looking at a holistic picture of agriculture. And that's from my side.
Great. These were the right closing remarks. Thank you so much, everyone. It's been a really interesting 2 hours, and it actually didn't feel like 2 hours because, yeah, each of the presentations was rich in information. And I believe this also has only been the beginning of a exchange and process of talking to each other on the various aspects that we've been discussing here today. So yeah, with that, I just also would like to thank everyone again for their openness, for their participation, for all the attendees for staying for such a long time and following the conversation. If the NAFDAC and NAQS representatives will allow us, we will share the presentations, all three of them, with you if you're interested. Hope you all have registered in the form that has been shared on the chat by my colleagues. And then, yeah, last but not least, I would also like to thank Ikenna Ovoebu, who has been working very hard in the background to make this event happen and to make sure that everyone is in the room and taking part in this conversation. So thanks, Ikenna, for all the hard work. Thanks, Chibu, and again, thanks, Silke and Ademola for the research. It's a good knowledge product we've put together. And with that, yeah, enjoy the rest of the afternoon. And I hope we will all be in touch in one way or the other. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Usman.
Will I receive the mail?
All right. Thank you very much, Joe Chin.
Yes, no, thanks for coming through.
All the best.
It's good having you.
Adios.